Okay. Welcome, everybody. We are live for another Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, Thursday night Carnivore Mastermind live stream. I've got an excellent panel with me this evening, and we're going to be talking about blood type on carnivore, the blood type diet. Does your blood type matter? We're going to be looking at results from the poll of the week, where I asked you if you knew your blood type. Obviously, as a carnivore or somebody who is on the proper human diet to some degree, and we'll look at those results. And then I pulled up a bunch of stuff that we can kind of go through as it arises. Watched a bunch of videos this week because I really wanted to give this topic its fair shake, because I think there's a lot of mixed opinions out there about it, like a lot of other diets, right? And I know the criticism of this blood type diet in particular a lot of times is that, well, there's no real studies that back it up, and so we should just dismiss it, right? Which is true. Even according to Dr. Diadamo, who is sort of the founder of the Eat Right for Your Type book and all of the different plans for the different blood types, they acknowledge that there's been no real trials that show that this diet works. It's really all anecdotal, right? And then there's some scientific basis that they go off of in terms of why, they make their assertions. Just a second. And so, but then on the other hand, that's also a similar criticism that we get as carnivores, right? Where it's like, oh, well, why should we believe you carnivores? There's no studies to back up your claims either, right? Just a bunch of anecdotes. And so when I published my healing journey video, 7-8 months ago now, I mentioned that that's really the reason why I went plant-based in the first place. When I first started my healing journey back in my early 20s, I was getting colonic treatments because I could not use the bathroom. And the practitioner there recommended that book to me. And she took my blood and she told me I was A positive. And so I went and got that book and read through the plan and the reasoning. And I thought, okay, I'm more adapted to eating grains, beans, legumes, very lean meat, stay away from red meat, stay away from fat. And that's what led me down initially, thinking that I was on the right track. I also read books by Andreas Moritz, who's a big vegan proponent, and a book about cancer, a book about metabolic disease, and all this kind of stuff. So that's how I got started into this whole thing, was really through the blood type diet. And it did not go well for me. And I had to eventually, it took me years and years to figure out that really, an ancestral approach to eating, and then through process of elimination, getting down to carnivore was the way that made me feel best. So I'm A positive. So maybe we'll just start there. We'll go around the table here before we get to the poll and all the stuff. And just tell us what your blood type is and maybe how long you've been carnivore. And we'll just kind of start there, because I think we could almost end the discussion right there. It's like there's a theory debunked, but there's a lot. And so I guess right before we do that, I just wanted to give this topic its fair shake, because there's a kernel of truth in everything, and I think there are some people that say like, oh, I did the blood type diet and it helped me, or I feel a lot better doing it. And I think there's some reasons for that, but I also think there's reasons why it's not the ultimate answer for most of us, and why so many of us are ending up in the place that we are now, taking all the plants out. And so, we had a bunch of stuff we can talk about, but let's start by just going around here and tell us your blood type. I'm A positive, which is supposed to be plant-based according to this protocol. So
my blood type is B positive, which I love for me. And I've been carnivore for 1 year, you guys. It's June. So 1 year on carnivore. And but according to the blood type diet, my diet, being a B blood type, should be a mixed diet that includes a whole bunch of plants as well as some lean meats.
Okay. All right. I'm John Lespine. I'm the carnivore teacher. I'm O positive. I'm positive that I'm O positive. And I didn't do a lot of research on this. I think I read a few articles years ago, way before I started carnivore, that I should stay away from things like eggplant and zucchini, that was not for O positive. I do remember that. And I thought, well, I don't have any issues with it. I wondered why. And then I have more to say on this later in the episode, but and this is just the introduction. But I've been carnivore for a year and a half, and I don't see going back because of a blood type description.
Hi. I'm not sure if it's me that's slow. It might be me. But I am A positive, and I know nothing about the blood type diet. So
There we go. Okay. I'll just hit enter there before I finish my typing there. Okay. So that's what I asked you guys all in the poll this week, assuming, again, most of us are carnivores and or ketovore or very low carb. And so I was curious, like maybe, because I've had some comments since I published that video of people saying like different opinions about this. It works, it doesn't work. There may be some truth to it. It's complete BS. And so I was curious to hear, everyone's thoughts and see what your blood types are. So actually, first, let's bring up this window. Because the average distribution of blood types in the United States. This is what I wanted to share first. Okay. I'm getting better at these window sharing things. So this is kind of like what we have. This is just the US. And then the world is different because there's regions that have like a lot more O, and then there's some areas of Europe and like Siberia and things like that that have a higher percentage of people with A blood. But this is kind of how it breaks down. So 38% is O positive and 7% is O negative. So if you add those together, you have what, 45% or 46% of people with O, and that's the majority in the United States and the majority in the world. The most common blood type is O. And then A is number 2, A positive 34%, A negative at 6%. And so here again with the blood type diet, at least as far as I've been able to tell, they group these together. So there's like the O group, so positive and negative would be the same diet. A positive and A negative would be the same diet. And then we have B, which would be the next most common, 9% for B positive and 2% for B negative. So 11% of the population in that B group. And then we have the AB positive and negative, which is the rarest blood type, the rarest altogether being AB negative. So that's just kind of an overview of, again, the people that we know. We don't know everyone's blood type, but that's the estimation. And then, so I thought it was pretty interesting this week. We basically got that exact same tier. So 35%, we got 430 votes, and 35% are in that O group. So right around that third, 33% or more. Slightly higher is O. And then the next most popular was A group, and then B group, and then the rarest was AB. And then 26% of you said you don't know your blood type. So that could change a little bit if everybody knew. But I thought that was kind of interesting, right? Because it really mimics what we see in the population as far as the the percentage of people with different blood types. But we're all proper human diet. So go ahead.
All right. I know that when I taught and we were on the other platform, the kids could put their little hand up in the platform.
Yeah, go for it.
I remember hearing an extremely rare blood type called Rh negative that isn't on that list or panel. Did you run across that in any of your articles? I saw AB negative, but I know there's an Rh negative that's so rare, but some people have it. Did you see anything on that?
I did, and I think it's on one of these tabs here where they talked about, because that one is like the rhesus or rhesus, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, and it's one of the factors that I think like you said, almost doesn't exist anymore, but they did find it in some of these Neanderthal genomes that I'm going to bring up here, because this is kind of the big one of the foundational pieces that I learned about that I thought, okay, this is why the blood type diet as it stands doesn't really make sense, right? Because in the whole philosophy, they claim that the O type is the most ancient, or the oldest blood type for our species. And so that would correlate then with it being more, those people would thrive more on higher amounts of animal protein. They still don't recommend high fat, however. It's still lean red meat, always lean, with fruits and vegetables. I don't think any of the types, it recommends, a significant amount of fat anyway, which is also kind of a red flag for me. But I think Mike Shaw, yeah, that's I think what it is too. It's the part that is positive or negative. But let me bring up this this thing here, because basically what we've learned is that, so there was only one. Let me bring this back up here. Share this tab. So this was an article in Archaeology. Genetic study examines Neanderthal blood types. There was only one Neanderthal's blood had been typed in the past and was found to be type O under the ABO system. Because, okay, I'm going to get lost in all this stuff. The ABO system is what we're using to classify these blood types that we're all familiar with. But did you know that there are like 45 other blood classification groups that we could look at in terms of which gene they come from? You know what I mean? So there's actually a ton, 44 other ways to classify our blood and make predictions about how we react to things than the one that we use. And so right there, I think that's a time to pause and say, okay, how much weight should we be throwing into this ABO classification when there's like a bunch of other ways we could be looking at this, right? But we only had one Neanderthal's blood type, which was O, under this ABO system, which is what we use in modern day to classify our blood. And so we just assumed, since all chimpanzees are type A and all gorillas are type B, that then all Neanderthals would have been type O. And I think that's where this idea came from, that O is the most ancient one, and therefore it would have been the hunter-gatherer, the hunters. And so all O people, regardless of the Rh factor, positive or negative, should thrive on a more animal-based diet. But this new study, this was published in 2021, this article, found that they found a Neanderthal woman's 100,000-year-old remains in a cave in Siberia. She had type A blood. The other Neanderthal's woman was 48,000 years old in another cave in Siberia, also had type A. And then there was a 64,000-year-old remain from a woman in a Croatian cave, had type B. So here's the thing about the Rh. Neanderthals, however, carried a now rare rhesus type called rhesus plus incomplete, which has only been found in the DNA of one member of Australia's Western Desert Aboriginal people. So that might be what you're referring to, John, when you're talking about that, which basically almost doesn't exist now. So really, there's a debate about what the oldest blood type is anyway, which sort of, in my view, debunks the whole thing, right? Because the whole premise was that O's were the original one, and then A was only a mutation, a genetic mutation during like when there was more agriculture, and so we evolved to eat more grains and porridge and all that, the slave diet, you know what I mean? And so so that might not be true at all. There clearly were Neanderthals with type A and type B blood. And so we were all eating fatty red meat too. So we could end the discussion right there, I think, but there's a lot more to this. But does anyone have a comment on that? I mean, what do y'all think?
I have another comment that just popped into my head. You take a family who, different children are different blood types based on the parents and then their parents. And does that mean that some children are supposed to thrive better with meat and some of the children in the same family are thriving better with plants? It kind of doesn't wash in my mind that a blood type is connected to, plants or meat, hunter or gatherer. And I think of what Dr. Berry said. Dr. Berry commented on this in one of his videos. He said, my blood type is red. And so is every human being. So we should all should be eating the same proper human diet, was his point.
And
like, makes a good point.
At Hack Your Health, I was listening to Dr. Sean Baker's speaking there, and he was talking about our bodies are made of animal protein. Like, we're not made of vegetative matter. And I don't think that changes per your blood type, right? And so his point is we need to eat what we're made of. Why would we want to try to convert plant matter into animal matter? We're made of animal matter. We should be eating that same thing. It's much easier for our bodies to get what we need from that, and it's all bioavailable. So like I said, and like he was saying, although he wasn't making this pertaining to blood type, but that thought happened to pop into my head when you were talking, Neah.
Right. And I think I kind of wrote down, so Paul Saladino has a great video on this that I found where he breaks down, because a lot of people just say, oh, well, there's no studies to prove it, so we should just dismiss it, which, is on the one hand true, but again, that's a criticism of our way of eating a lot of times. And so I found, he had about a 45-minute video where he broke down, like what is the ABO? Like, what is it? And why do we have different blood groups? And then that's where I learned that there are like all these other blood group systems that we could use to get information, right? And so why would we limit it to just one and think that that's the end all be all? But really, what I got out of that video is that the premise for this whole thing is that there's lectins in plants, there's lectins in food, and that the lectins bind to the different receptors via the different, blood types and affect them differently. And so that's the theory behind this, is like, depending on what glycoproteins you have on the edges of your red blood cells, different foods are going to affect that differently, and it could cause inflammation and glycation and all this kind of stuff. But really, there have been other studies that have looked at this and shown that every blood type reacts almost equally to the plant foods that are highest in lectins anyway. So things like beans, wheat, all the gluten grains, dairy and eggs are some of the most triggering things for all the blood type groups, and meat didn't come up in any of those. And so, and then you can go to Diademo's website, and he has a rebuttal to that critique of that study, where it's like, oh, they didn't do their study right. So now we're just here in the study wars again, like we always end up when you get into any of this stuff, right? It's like, well, their study's not good and mine is. And so you just kind of get into that rabbit hole. I think what's important that we can glean from the blood type diet and that research and, the opinions of that is that, hey, there are lectins in food. There are actually lectins in meat as well, and animal products. And we can talk about that too. But the ones that are the most problematic, that affect the most people in the most severe way, are in these common allergen groups, right? And so that's probably why people feel better when they do this, because it's somewhat of an elimination diet, right? You're cutting out large swaths of things on your avoid list. And so likely you're cutting out, whether it's oxalate or lectins or something else in these foods that was irritating you in some way. And so that's probably why there are people that say, oh, I feel so much better after doing the blood type diet. But all of us in this group, we've taken it all the way to the end point, right? Like eliminating nearly everything that we possibly could, and we feel the best. And you look at comments all over the internet and you see people are feeling the best when they go to this clean slate and they take out all the plants. Now, for some people, grass-fed stuff might be a step that they have to take, because we feed grain-fed animals a lot of high lectin raw grains like corn and soy and wheat and all this kind of stuff that they're not designed to eat either. And so they can accumulate lectins in their meat and therefore the associated dairy, cheese, butter, things like that. So some people that are super sensitive might have to go, even further than that and take it to pasture-raised, grass-fed animals to avoid that. But I think for the vast majority of people, right, we're seeing tremendous improvements without even having to go to that final step. So Larry, you want to give us your thoughts? Do you know your blood type? What's your blood type?
Yes, of course.
And
I
are
do.
you
I'm a
thriving on
soldier.
carnivore regardless, or?
Soldier, and soldiers all know their blood type because we might get blown up and have to tell someone. We write it on ourselves. So A negative. But yeah, what you're saying about the grass fed. So all beef is pretty much grass fed. You're talking about grass finished or grain finished. So what
Right.
they do is
Yeah.
they get a cow that lives its whole life eating grass, and they finish it with 6 to 8 weeks of grain to get it fat.
Right.
And that's what. So that and they do, of course, absorb some of the lectins you're talking about. But the my thoughts on the blood work diet, a couple things. One, kind of piggybacking on what John was saying, I think you can look genetically and look at groups of people like the Inuit or maybe people in Finland or that would eat fish and do well on fish, right? And that's more of a listen. They have all the blood types up there, and I assume that people that are Finnish or Norwegian have the same blood types everyone else does because we're all the same animal, right? So this is the thing that kind of steers me away from this theory a little bit. Is just doesn't make sense that some people would do better than others in a genetic pool in a certain area that are eating a heavy fish diet or a heavy pork diet or heavy beef diet. That's one thing I would think. And then the other thing is the blood type diet, from what I understand, recommends avoiding highly processed foods, desserts, chips, and fast foods. So that kind of is an elimination diet, like you said. So you are going to feel better if you cut that out. If you cut out certain things, you're just going to feel better, just like vegans do and vegetarians, because they cut out and they go into more of a whole food diet. So yeah, I kind of fall in with that group. It's like Anthony Chaffee said, there's no example of any species on the planet where two members of that species have different optimum diets. I mean, we don't look at lions and say, well, I wonder what his blood type is. Wonder why this lion isn't getting, and this lion has different blood types. They're all eating meat, though. So, I mean, it just doesn't make sense from an anthropological kind of biological way to me that would be the way it works. I haven't done any studies, so I don't know. I can tell you A negative works in my case. A negative works great with beef and pork, no problem.
Yeah, so for A's, since that's what I am, I always, and that's, so I guess, sort of the B's, I guess. It's sort of the one that's like stereotypically supposed to be plant-based. But here again, there were Neanderthals with type A and type B. So I feel like that's the full debunking factor. The two
No, we're
things
not
are
Neanderthals.
that
We're Homo sapien. Neanderthals didn't make it.
well, right, but their argument is that that's the old that O was the oldest blood type, and so that's why the O people should eat animal based, and then the A came afterwards during agriculture, so that's why we should be more plant based because that's what was going on at the time. But then they found all these Neanderthals that had type A, way before the type O, and so we don't know. We could find another remain tomorrow that's alien or something. I don't know. It's green blood.
I know the plants jacked me up, and I'm A, so I could not eat plants. If I eat any plants, I get gassy. My body just kind of rejects it.
Yeah, it's where's I have like so many windows open right now. Type A. Here we go. So here's what we're supposed to eat as type A's. Okay. Animal proteins, chicken and turkey. That's it. And then seafood. We can eat fish.
And you're supposed
salmon.
to take Biktarvy. You saw that, right?
Yeah. Right here.
That's what you have to take along with your chicken and turkey.
That's right. We can have snails, sardines, sea trout, fish. Lots of fish.
One thing that the blood type diet's really good at, it's really good at selling books. That's what it's really good at.
And kits to test your secretor status, which we can get into as well. Because I've had some people say, "Oh, we didn't test your are you a secretor or a non-secretor?" And so 80% of people are, which means you you secrete like the antigens that we're talking about on the red blood cells into other bodily fluids. So it's not just in your blood, it's in like your saliva, and men it's in semen, it's in like even your eye fluid, I think, like other bodily fluids. So they can actually tell your blood type in many 80% of cases from one of those other bodily fluids. But so then there's like, that there's a difference between if you're a non-secretor, which I pulled up for the A's too, there's like a different set of foods that you're supposed to be able to tolerate. And apparently you're supposed to be able to tolerate more red meat because as an A non-secretor, because you have higher levels of stomach acid. Now, I feel like I took some HCl for a while, like about 4 weeks, but that was when I was 6 or 7 months into carnivore and I was really upping my fat and my body wasn't used to it. You're cold. You want to grab the blanket? Or I have a sweater over there you can borrow. So yeah, I mean, I just kind of wanted to show like this is what happened when I first did this. Like, so I basically did this. I ate fish, chicken. I didn't eat any red meat. And I don't think I had any dairy, really, for the most part. But it says you can have yogurt, kefir, and certain cheeses. Peanuts. I know I can't tolerate peanuts at all. They're saying nuts are a great source of protein. Typically have most nuts. I can't eat any nuts, you guys, or my gut will explode. Like it is no good at all. And beans. This is the one that just makes me laugh out loud. This is what I'm supposed to be able to tolerate really well. These are literally the worst things I could ever put in my body. Like if I had to pick one food, number one, that I would never ever touch again, life or death, it would be beans of any kind. Like that's
I find it
the absolute
interesting
worst.
that they're very specific, and I'm wondering where that specificity comes from. Like, how did they determine that, yes, lentils is a good bean that you can eat, and a black-eyed pea is a good bean? And where did this come from? From what I've been looking at, there was no real heavy research, but it looks like they're so specific that like they have some data behind it.
It makes you
Right?
wonder who funded that.
Yes, absolutely. Because
Dick
I don't.
Jarvie, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, this is it. You can go to their website and you can look around, eat right for your
Yeah.
type, and you click on scientific basis, and this is this is what you get. This square right here. The many ways blood type influences the microbiome. Molecular mimicry, which we know about lectins, so cut all the lectins out. And meat, the highest lectins are plants, period. And if you need to go grass-fed, grass-finished, if you're super sensitive, and cut out dairy and eggs, we know that some people do have to do that, at least for a time period till you can heal, and maybe you can add them back in.
Are they only
But
mentioning
this is it.
lectins, though? Do they mention
I mean,
phytic
that
acid?
is no, not that I
Or
can find.
oxalate? Oxalates are
No.
huge. You know, if they're only mentioning lectins, that makes me question the validity of this. They're only mentioning one of the many anti-nutrients in plants that some people tolerate better than others.
Well, I'm a positive like Neah, but beans are my favorite. I love beans. So how does that make any sense? They don't bother me at all.
There you go.
I just
Really?
chose to leave them out so that I could be carnivore. So
Do you find a difference at all with the types of beans? Because it says like garbanzos are an avoid, but black beans are okay, are like
No,
a superfood for A positive.
I love beans, all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering
See
what's
there.
the difference between the garbanzo and the black-eyed pea. Like, what is the thing you have to avoid between the two? Like, what's the nutrient that you're looking to not have, and how'd they find that out?
From what I can tell, it's just that. Is this the one I'm still sharing?
You're sharing,
Okay.
so.
Like, so here's the full text. Under full text articles, you can go read like all of these things. This is what they base, everything on. But from what I can tell, it's just that they're talking about the different glycoproteins in these specific foods and the way they bind specifically to the antigens on the different red blood cells. And so there may be a slight difference between a certain type of bean, I guess, according to them, versus another one. But I mean, I find from my own experiment that I can't eat any beans. You know, I've made my own hummus. I've made like used organic chickpeas, and I've like sprouted my own grain. I've done all this kinds of crazy stuff, you guys. All this kinds of crazy stuff, thinking, oh, I just need to do the healthier version, or I need to do the more organic, natural version of all this stuff. I've made all my own fermented vegetables, all different kinds, sauerkraut, cabbage, carrots. I've made kombucha. I've done all this different stuff. You know, homemade sourdough, thinking, oh, I'll be able to tolerate that, right? It's the most natural thing. Can't have any of it. And so, and there again, like some people probably can. And like I'm obviously super sensitive to a lot of things, and that's just for whatever reason. But there again, I don't think saying, oh, just follow this list to a T and you'll be fine is going to work for the vast majority of people. I don't.
I have a thought. If we're all carnivores, and every human being functions well on carnivore because it is our ancestral diet. It's what we're meant to eat. But the people who have severe autoimmune issues, severe, and they feel better and eliminate symptoms when they go lion or strict carnivore, what are their blood types? Could they be the ones that do they all line up? Are most of those people the same blood type? That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, there is something written in here about like my blood type, the A's, that say that there are correlations with higher risks of diabetes and heart disease and cancer. So like just kind of being sick in general. Whereas the O types, again, correlation, are correlated with being more disease resistant. And there's something to, and this was in Dr. Saladino's video too, like these blood type mutations, like why would we have them? Why wouldn't we all just be the same, like chimpanzees or, you know, gorillas or whatever? Are all the same blood type, no matter which one you test. Why are we all different? Well, we did go to different regions. We did, you know, populate the entire planet essentially. And it would make sense because maybe there was a certain disease or a certain infection that was, you know, a plague going on in one area. And so people with that, you know, immunological mutation would survive, right? So it made us more diverse so that we wouldn't all 100% get wiped out by one virus or bacteria or something like that. And so, you know, that's kind of the argument the best argument I've heard for why this would exist in the first place. But that doesn't mean that it correlates to diet. You know, I mean, that doesn't mean that this list of foods was the only thing that certain groups were eating. Like my ancestors are from Europe, Eastern Europe and Northern Europe, as far as I know. And there was a lot of meat. You know what I mean? There was a lot of like pigs and goats and ducks and chickens and fish, probably, you know, like there was a lot of meat.
So Neah,
well, I don't know
when you watched the videos about the blood type diet, what were the people in the comments saying? Were they anything like the carnivore comments that we see where people's lives are changed and they've healed from all these diseases? Did the comments look like carnivore video comments?
Yeah, so I actually pulled one up from Dr. Baker here, who is just basically saying that, like, if you have red blood, you know, you can eat the proper human diet type of thing. And all the comments there are, let's see, basically saying, yeah, I'm this type, I'm that type. Here they are. Basically, yeah, I'm all different types, A, B. Well, this one person said, I'm AB, found it really hard to stand carnivore because my digestion gets blocked up. It's so bad that I feel like a brick in my stomach. I had one person comment that on my channel that they were AB negative. I think it's the most rare, and they just couldn't tolerate fat for some reason. So that's why they stopped doing carnivore. B positive, I'm carnivore. O positive. Push the other button. Go to the left. Yeah, that one. Type A, 3 years on carnivore. A positive, I'm thriving on carnivore. O negative, A A positive, good to go, 67 pounds down in 10 months. So yeah, there's people of all blood types doing this. And I think that's reflected in our poll as well, because we have almost the exact same distribution, that matches the populace. And
So
we're all doing this and feeling better.
look at animals. I don't know about chimpanzees, but dogs have 13 blood types. Cats have 3. Horses have 8, and they're all eating
Yeah.
the same food. And maybe some dogs with one of these 13 blood types maybe eat some other food better than other, like chicken, or I don't know, but it just it seems like all the animals would be like this, right? And I just don't know. I'm just kind of with Dr. Barry on that. If you got red blood, you should be eating a proper human diet.
Good point. Good point. I mean, animals, we go back to basics, the specifics. The animals eat their species-specific food, and they just know what is their species-specific food. Whether they're carnivore or omnivore or herbivore, they have a very narrow range of what they can eat, and they don't go off of that unless, like dogs, they're fed, human feed them kibble and crap, and we see all the dogs coming down with cancer and all these problems, and cats getting leukemia and diabetes and all these things because we're feeding them the wrong food. But left to their own nature, they know what to eat. And we did too, all the way up until 1880.
Yeah.
Got too smart for our britches.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and I was going to go back to what you were saying, John, about people with more like severe autoimmune stuff. And so I think, and then the type A, because it did say, because it talks about in the book and on the website, like other things, like exercise is different for all the blood groups, right? There's certain blood types that should do like only, way more strenuous exercise. I think it's the O people, like they're the hunters, right? So they should be like eating steaks with no fat, mind you, and running all the time and lifting heavy weights all day. And then people who are A positive or A negative, can't tolerate as much stress, and should only do things like Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, stuff like that, where, which I honestly find to be sort of the case for me. Like again, it's hard to compare, right? Because there's so many other variables in life. Like how stressed am I compared to someone else? Like that's an impossible question to know because I can't be in anyone else's body and feel what it feels like to be them. But it's like I do have to be very aware of my stress. And I feel like when I exercise very strenuously, like I have a lot in the past, like, it can be something that I feel like does really stress me out. So, but then there have been times when I did it and didn't feel bad at all. So I don't know. I guess right now that's what I've been doing is because I've been trying to reduce overall stress so I can give my body a break and encourage it to heal. But there again, you get into this whole realm. It's like this defines everything about your lifestyle and how you should react and tolerate, everything. And I just don't think that there's that. I don't think that it's that individual, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, I think the spectrum's too broad. Again, going all the way from like basically vegan, vegetarian, hyper plant-based to carnivore almost, but still eat your fruits and vegetables and don't eat any fat, especially animal fat. I mean, literally, guys, canola oil is on the recommended food list for my blood type.
Well,
Canola oil,
that
flaxseed oil,
trash the article right there.
Rye. When they told me gluten is bad, but you can eat rye, it's like I've made my own dang rye bread from grains that I soaked myself, in the proper way and made my own dang bread, with the fancy expensive yeast and all this stuff. Like I was throwing up and living in the bathroom for 3 days after that. Like, don't tell me, you know what I mean? Don't you tell me what I can eat. So
I think if we read an article and it's making all these claims and we want to believe it, we're like, oh, I'm O positive. Let me find that section of the article. Oh, look what it says. Interest. And you buy into it and you start to believe it and you start to follow it. And then if you have some positive results, you believe it. And it has nothing to do with reality. It's just your brain went along with something that, like you said, the variables are so many that there's no possible way that this
I
could
think I'm
be
going to come out with a new
individualized.
book, John. I'm going to come
Yeah.
out with the astrology diet.
It's
Are you
just
a
like the
Taurus?
astrology diet.
You're a Taurus?
Someone
Yeah.
mentioned that in the comments.
I know,
Gemini.
Aquarius
Hey,
or
I'm
something.
Aquarius.
Yeah.
So for
Well,
my
you know-
blood type,
go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just saying for my
Okay.
blood type, I'm supposed to avoid chicken, just avoid chicken. And instead I'm supposed to eat things like lamb and venison. Well, I love chicken. It's delicious. And I don't, have any negative effects from it. And I really don't like lamb or venison. It mentions nothing about beef, and beef is my absolute favorite, and I feel the best on beef, but I can't even get down a couple bites of the kind of meats that they tell me that I should be eating. So no, I'll stick with my picanha. Thanks.
Nice.
Dr. Nelson's on again. Hi, Dr. Nelson.
Hi, Dr. Nelson.
What's up, buddy? Good to see you.
The cave
Yeah, those cave paintings
canola
of canola plants. Right. My ancestors were like, yes, we should put this on our list of foods to pass down to our, offspring that they need to consume a lot of. Yeah.
This
So
diet,
go ahead.
it sounds like if you just did an extreme elimination diet and then added things back in one at a time, you could prove or disprove the blood type diet very easily. Which is like, who do I know that's done that? It's so weird.
What are we all doing right now?
I can't think of it, but yeah, seems like that's what you could do to figure it out.
Yeah. And that's the conclusion I came to again. Because, I don't like to be dogmatic about stuff. I don't like to just purely dismiss things based on, it didn't work for me, so it can't work for anyone else. Because I think that, we are individual to a certain degree, right? And we all have different health histories, different genetic predispositions. And that is true. There are some people, there's like 20% of the population that's more predisposed genetically through a mutation to be triggered by mold toxicity and things like that. So that's why different people can live in moldy buildings or go to moldy schools or whatever for years. And some people will get really sick and end up with SIRS and not everybody else does, So there is some truth to genetic differences, and disease and health outcomes, I think. So again, and there have been several people that commented, it's like, hey, it's not out of the complete realm of thought that different blood types may react differently to certain things. But I think the way that it's presented in this literature and sort of the way that it's set up is like, this is the answer, and then if people, I got a comment that's like, well, all the non-responders, aka the people it didn't work for, you didn't get your secretor status tested, you didn't buy this kit and get this tested, and you didn't get a hair sample and get all your, everything tested for what you're sensitive to genetically. And it's like, so obviously the blood type diet wasn't enough, right? It didn't give you all the information because you had to go get all these other things tested. And now you're on just as a restricted diet as I am, which was the criticism in the beginning. It's like, oh, you're on such a restrictive diet, So it's like, you just did an elimination diet too. You just had more testing done. I just did it the old fashioned way and just cut things out of my life until I figured out I could only eat meat. So, there's all different ways to go about this. And I think there's something that can be learned from the blood type diet, which is don't eat lectins because they're bad and they can manipulate the hormones. They can manipulate your gut. They can actually latch on to that tiny little 1-cell endothelium in your gut and rip holes in it. And then all the stuff starts leaking in. So undigested proteins, lectins themselves, which do mimic, they do this thing called molecular mimicry where they can bind to cells and act like hormones, or the cell thinks it's a hormone, or the cell thinks it's a protein that it needs, right? But then the immune system reacts to that. And so it can trigger autoimmunity and all this kind of stuff. So there's truth woven into this, but it's not the whole picture. And like we've been saying, that's just one of the things that are in plants that they use to defend themselves that harm us as humans. And so there's plenty of things on these safe food lists that are still toxic and would be worth looking at eliminating if somebody's still having symptoms. So that's kind of my take on the whole thing. And yeah, I'm A positive. I'm going to continue being A positive and being a red meat eater.
Yeah,
Y'all.
that whole like lists and different lists, that's actually really overwhelming and confusing. And I love the simplicity of the carnivore diet. I always know what I can eat, and I just love that. It's so easy. You don't have to go look at a list every time something happens.
I agree with you. I think that you know, we can all function well on a carnivore diet. Can some people function on some plants? Well, whatever age they are, their body is able, their bandwidth amount can tolerate it for a while. But when they hit an older age, our body can't tolerate those things anymore. Your bandwidth is smaller as you age. And things you can tolerate when you're younger, you can't when you're older, but not meat. You know, we can all eat ruminant, non-ruminant meat, fish, and eggs, and animal fats. So this concept of the blood type diet, interesting to read, fun to read. I find it comical that they have lists of foods. Who generated the list? Where did they get the list? Where's the study for the list? Why this bean and not that bean? It plants more questions in my head than answers, and we just tend to you don't have to overthink all of this, right? Oh, what's your blood type? I have to stay away from this or try that. Just eat meat and eggs and fish and feel great. And even though I know what you mean, Neah, that everything has a little validity to it, we can learn a little bit of something from this, possibly. But I just keep shaking my head.
Right. And I think like I read all the responses to criticism on their website, you know, the Diadema website. And it's like once you are somebody who sort of stakes your claim on this, you can't go back. You know, you can't say, oh, well, we found out that the A blood type's actually the oldest. That sort of like debunks the whole thing. And then it's like, well, the response is like, yeah, well, it is, but Wikipedia doesn't include all the information that's ever been written about everything. So that's nonsense. And it's like, well, yeah, but we just found like 3 Neanderthal ladies in caves that were A, or 2 of them were A and 1 was B. So like what, you know, so once new information comes in, then you got to be open enough to add that, you know, consider that. Otherwise you're just digging your heels into something that's you're never gonna get out, because it's not, you know what I mean? It's just wrong in some way. But they can't go back once they've made their entire career and name and all this stuff, all these products and tests, and everything is based on that.
There you go.
That way of looking at everything.
The tests are the money.
They don't want to change.
Yeah. All the tests, all the research, they're dug in and they're committed, and they don't want to be proven wrong. So this is similar to a lot of other things out here in the world where people are dug in, and if the research can prove that it's totally wrong, they won't admit it. A lot of the people about cholesterol and salt and seed oils will not give up their fighting, and doctors on YouTube are fighting against the other doctors, saying, no, seed oils are healthy. They lower your cholesterol. They're not letting go.
Heart healthy. No
matter what evidence is shown, they're not letting their grasp go on these myths and these lies, because they're dug in, because they will have to realize their ego will get hurt. I was wrong all that time. I am wrong now. Everything I believe in is wrong. People don't want to be wrong, so they dig in deeper. And I don't know about the blood type diet. I kind of don't want to know any more about it, to be honest with you. I have too many other things.
You don't.
I have too many other things.
I did it all for you today.
Yeah,
there's nothing else there.
Not much more. Well, you hit the nail on the head right there. Oh, it was the whole time, and then they just discovered just discovered after we thought it was O, was the oldest, somebody with A. Well, that just
You-
trashes all of their evidence and the whole
And look
entire-
at
The
you can
whole
look
premise.
at how Ansel Keys handled the Minnesota experiment.
right.
Okay, so if you
Yep.
don't know about this, Ansel Keys was a low cholesterol, low fat diet guy, and that's why we got this low fat diet we all got stuck on. And his whole hypothesis was based on some flawed studies that didn't include a lot of data. The 7 Nation study, when there's actually 23 or something like that. So anyway, he came out with this whole study, and then he wanted to prove it. Like, good for you, Ansel Keys. Let's prove it. So he did the Minnesota study, where I think it was mental health homes where they could control their diets completely. And what they did was they put some people on like vegetable fats and some people on animal fats. And they wanted to show, oh, look, these guys are eating vegetable fats, their margarine and their seed oils, and they're getting much healthier. But it didn't work out that way. The data didn't show that at all. In fact, it showed worse outcomes for the people on the seed oils and the vegetable, on the margarine and such. So what he do? He didn't even publish it, not even in some like off-brand magazine. He hid the data until after he died. They found it, and someone went through and analyzed it. And this is decades after the fact. And you can look it up, the Minnesota experiment with Ansel Keys. You'll see that. And that's when they found all it is. This is exactly the same thing we're seeing, that people will not back down because their reputation staked on it, and their whole career and financial model is based on that too. So you got to think that way, that these guys have conflict of interest. Just put it that way.
Right, for sure. And that's, again, this is a familiar thing we're dealing with all over the place right now. It's just the paradigm. We're trying to shift the paradigm and show that and I don't see, like, I went to look at the reviews on Amazon for the book, because that's the first place I thought to look. It's like, okay, if there's going to be proponents of this blood type thing, right? You'll see it on the book, you'll see it, on the website, or I couldn't find really any videos from Dr. Diadamo or anybody on YouTube talking, like where there would be comments, people saying, oh yeah, this worked so well for me, type of thing. So I was like, okay, maybe there are, let's see if there's any evidence for it. Kind of like the evidence that we have. But I just don't see any, like there's people that say under the book review on Amazon that it helped them. But there again, was it because they just removed a bunch of high lectin foods that were irritating them? Period. Like that would have happened to anybody regardless of their blood type. Or did they eliminate, like I think Larry, you said, about, all the processed garbage and stop drinking Coke, and now they feel great? It's like, well, it could have been that, we don't know. But there again, that's what puts us in sort of this different category, is because we're eliminating all plants for the most part, most of us, and all processed food and all seed oils and all these things. And so if there was some benefit, right. And then if you find that, oh, you add something in and there's a benefit, then great, but I see tons and tons and tons of comments saying that they tried adding this back in and nope, they react to it, or they react to this, or they react to that. And so, you really can tell the level of toxicity in some of this stuff once you get that clean slate and then you try to add something back in. And so, so yeah, there again, I'm in a way, I'm glad I tried it, because now every time I get a comment about it, I get to scroll past it, kind of a thing. Cause it's like, yeah, been there, done that. That was the beginning of, a new level of hell in a lot of ways for my health journey. Like I probably set myself back years just by doing several years of that type of stuff, and trying to make all this stuff at home and spend all this money and time, and none of it worked. So, I like this. Ollie says, I tried the type O diet and got fat. Like you're supposed to do the opposite, right? What else we got? There's something else I was gonna.
People are making great comments, but I'm not seeing a lot of questions.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any questions either.
Ansel Keys, that guy, man. I don't know if you've heard Chafee lately. He every time he brings up Ansel Keys, he prefaces it by saying, the devil.
Yeah,
That
he's up there with Mao, Stalin, and Hitler.
right, because the damage he caused.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm not joking.
People today, the average people on the street, if we were to go out with a microphone and go and poll people, they all believe the myths about the damn cholesterol.
All of
Yeah,
them.
but they don't know who Ansel Keys was.
But they've never heard that name before. You're
Right,
absolutely right.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ah,
He up there with Mao, Stalin, and Hitler.
yep.
He should, and I don't know if he ever will, but he should be.
Yeah, I like this, Cammie. It's like, are there hundreds of people,
Mhm.
compelled to make YouTube channels out of the goodness of their hearts to tell everyone about how the blood type diet changed their life and reversed their mental illness, and
Good
they
point.
lost all this weight and they don't have addictions anymore and they feel happy for the first time in 10 years? I haven't found one yet.
And if you want to put your dog on a blood type diet, there's 18 blood types, so that'd be really hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
You better get their secretor status tested.
yeah, figure out that, and then what can my dog eat? I don't know, but he's great on chicken. That's all I know. Duke's great on chicken.
Yeah, I haven't read Diet for a Small Planet myself yet, but I've heard that referenced many times. And this is all. So I had an interview with this guy called Ben Wehrman. He found me on Instagram, and he has a channel on YouTube and a podcast. And it was like 2 months ago we did the interview, but it just came up on his channel, and I forgot to share it. I was going to today, but we kind of talked about this where all this stuff is connected. The whole plant-based thing, the saving the planet, the overpopulation stuff, like all this globalism, like all this stuff is interconnected. You know what I mean? And so it's like, here we go, diet for a small planet. What does that tell you? You know what I mean? What are we gonna do with all the people that don't belong on the planet now because there's too many of us? Like, you know what I mean? So we should all like, that's a topic for another day. But it's this type of stuff too that influences people, I think, and makes us.
Did you Ben also interviewed me a while back? Did you guys talk about anything other than carnivore and diet? Curious.
We talked about spirituality and kind of my views on that, with the very plant-based origins of a lot of like yoga stuff. And so we got into that. And then he mentioned some other people that he talked with, some Bitcoin people, and
Right, Bitcoin.
just kind of about all this stuff.
Did he go into
government,
gender?
where it's going? No, we didn't.
Just curious.
But there again, I really think, not to get political or anything, but it's like, when you start to look at all these trending things in the culture, right? These things that they're pushing so hard on all of us, despite some of these objective facts or, the things that we've known forever. Some of this ancestral wisdom, right? About health and nutrition. All this stuff was made into, there's 5 tangents I want to go off at the same time right now. But it's all connected, and it's all, in my opinion, it's all about control. It's about keeping all of us fat and sick and mentally ill and unhealthy so that we're weak and we're compliant and we just kind of let people roll over us and do whatever they want, right? That is the way that's the state that they want us to be in, so that they can enact whatever kind of agenda that they want. And if they want to eliminate millions and millions of people so we have a healthier planet, they'll be able to do that because people will just fall in line and sign up for whatever, because they're not going to be thinking clearly, and they're going to be dependent on all the pharmaceutical drugs and addicted to all the foods, right? And they're not going to be able to make informed, intelligent choices. And we're not going to be able to come together and revolt against some of this stuff. And so that's why I think nutrition and getting your nutrition right is so incredibly powerful, right? Because it opens this door to how you look at everything else and how you decide what's right and wrong and how you make decisions for your family and what the next generation is going to experience. And so we have the power right now to make changes, not just in our own lives, but that are going to last generationally, right? Because if we get healthy and we have healthy kids and healthy grandkids, we're going to be able to solve some of these issues that we have and maybe see each other's points of view for the good that is in them. Again, because I believe there's a little bit of truth in everything. I don't think people believe things that they think are false. I think, everybody has a perspective that's a little bit different, but we've got to be able to see that in each other and see the solution that makes sense, for humanity. And that's hard to do with all the noise and addictive crap in today's world. So I'll get off my soapbox, but, yeah, has yours come up, your interview with Ben?
Mine was 4 or 5 months ago, so he took a while to put it out. So I had emailed him and said I'd like to see it, and it's out. It's on I think it's on my channel, or it was
Okay.
on the channel that I lost, and so maybe it's gone. But I think I have it on my hard drive. It was okay. I watched a few of his others, and I started following him on Twitter, and then I started seeing some of his viewpoints on certain things that I won't go into here, specifically about genders, that you would very much be against. So let's not go down there, but look into it if you want. But interesting, very young guy who travels all over the world, and he's full of himself. Let's put it that way.
You got all the answers. One
Yeah.
of those guys.
Yeah.
Interesting.
If he's watching,
Okay.
we had a good interview. We had a good exchange. I just, I guess you're allowed to disagree with one another.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
You are. You can have your opinion and be wrong.
Absolutely.
Or be right.
Keeping respect and treating one another with respect should always be maintained, whether you disagree or not.
That's one thing I think we see a lot of in carnivore, which I like. Not everywhere, but we do see a lot of it. Probably more than other communities, I would say, that I've been involved in.
Mhm.
There's still some disrespectful behavior on like Facebook groups and such, but for the most part, it's pretty respectful. And people can, I think, being in this kind of way of eating, you can agree to disagree and just keep going. Because really, does it matter if, AX123 in Miami is eating something and disagrees with me? I don't even know who that person is. I don't care. And I know N equals 1, and I'm worried about me and my family and people around me. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and I'm the same. Like, I don't think everyone has to agree on everything, but I think that, again, in this world we're in, like, all the algorithms favor polarization and separation more than they do nuance and conversations like we're trying to have right now, where we have, different opinions, and not that all of us necessarily do, but we're opening this up to, hey, what really is this, and is there any truth here, and what can we learn from it, and what do we think is BS and what's not. And so those are the types of conversations that need to happen more, is because we need to look and see each other and understand each other as other humans, instead of just saying we need to eliminate half the population, and we're going to do that via forcing everyone to eat the cricket bread, while all the elites keep their steak and lobster. Like, sorry, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that for you either.
Yeah, I agree, Neah. And I became more and more disillusioned in my military career towards the end of my career when I saw a lot of that firsthand. When I joined initially in the 80s, I was very much a true believer in all things America, and we were always the good guys wearing the white hat, going after the bad guys. And towards the end, I felt like everything was corporate. It's all corporatized. I mean, and it was all contracts. I mean, because when I came in the military in the beginning in the 80s, when you went to the chow hall, you were served by other military members. When you went to the gate, you were greeted and they checked and that was not civilians. They were military. All these jobs, laundry was military. All these jobs, now they're all contractors, and they're lucrative contractors. And I really went down that road, and I got super disillusioned. And then I find carnivore. Now I realize it's everywhere. It's not just the military. It's my medicine. It's my doctor. It's my food. It's everything. It's every ad you see on TV. It's every news agency that's being paid for by these. It's ridiculous. And I just got I don't know. I basically, I don't trust authority at all anymore. I don't recognize authority. a lot of times. Well, not as being a credible authority. There are authorities, but I don't necessarily agree with what they're doing or what they stand for. Even though they say they stand for one thing, they actually stand for something else. So just like you said, Neah, I mean, these are compromised at the top. Everything's compromised at the top, and it's tough. It's tough to live in a country like this.
Oh, you were getting political. Okay.
Yeah, we went from blood type to the government's trying to kill us.
Yeah, I pulled that train out of station. So
It goes with tangents, right?
but and I just see that there's lines you can draw between all this stuff. And so once you kind of see behind the curtain in this context, in this space, and you realize, oh, all this was a lie, and it's mostly all just about making money. And once people establish something and they're making a lot of money, they can't open up and change because their entire life and reputation and everything's built on that. Then, what else is like that? There's a lot of other things that are like that.
What
too,
else are they lying about?
And
Right.
so,
Right. It makes you question
it's just
other
being
things.
skeptical. Well, I know we're past the hour, so I want to respect everybody's time. But anybody else have closing thoughts or anything about? Are you all going to stay on the same diet now that?
Oh, I'm on the red blood type diet, and I think my blood is going to stay red, and it likes meat.
I've got some beef
Red meat.
waiting in my kitchen right now. I'm gonna go chow down on as soon
All
as we
right.
get off of here.
Californian there time.
Yeah, it's only 5 o'clock here.
I'm a true believer again, but it's in the proper human diet, and that is the one thing that I've found in the last decade that I can be a completely 100% true believer in and know that it won't fail me for sure.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah.
I found my true believer focus, and it's paying off for me and for all my friends here.
Yep.
Yeah. Sticking to carnivore.
Me too. I'll be coming up on my year soon. I actually get, these like things on your phone where it's like, oh, 1 year ago, here's your pictures. And I've been getting like carnivore meals in my 1 year ago stories now for like the last 2 months. But really, it's when I stopped drinking. That's when I started counting like day one. Because it's like, okay, this is different than the time before. Because I wasn't drinking alcohol. So anyway, July will be my 1 year sometime in July. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out tonight. Thanks everybody for being in the chat and going on all these tangents with us. Well, I don't know what I'm doing for Sunday live stream yet. I haven't put that up, but we'll see what we can come up with. And here's my light. It's looking for that this whole time. And everybody take care, and we'll see you again next Thursday for another one and another poll and another topic.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.